Yes. And again, like I said, they did show me proof. I mean, it's, the kind of things that
Proof because they demonstrated the thing to do with the sound. Is that correct?
well, that was just in the most recent one. But I mean, my wife and I sat on the pickup truck on the back tailgate of our pickup truck in 2011 and saw this ship that there were three of them standing there with swords up in the air. And the next thing you know, this huge monster ship comes out from the east side of the road, and it's maybe 500 or 600 feet above our heads, and it's huge. And it was so big that it started a weather pattern that became a terrible monsoon storm right then and there. And it was just, that's how the lightning ended up. This whole sky was dark, and there were other ships that were south in the sky. The whole sky was lit up with ships. I mean,
okay.
Get any more?
Why do you say the ETs were holding swords? Are you saying?
Yep.
They were holding swords.
Big swords, like literally looked like broadswords, which, trust me, didn't do anything for my sense of the fact that it was really, an actual experience, but it happened. All I do is repeat the truth.
All right. Let's see. John, can you disclose any info that good ETs disclose to you that humanity should know?
Right now, we already have all the answers to fix everything that is wrong with this planet in terms of ecological damage, in terms of radiation damage, in terms of being able to have access to clean water, clean air. And really, it's just about us as the inhabitants of this planet deciding that we're not going to be in a position anymore where we're going to allow the rulers of the planet to tell us what conditions we have to live in, or how we have to live in, or who we have to pay for what. We already have the availability to change all that. We have the availability not to be a bunch of rats and a bunch of wheels making, the rest of the system work for the 1%.
Okay. Someone else wants to know, do you know anything about the ET's intentions?
I can only speak for the ones that I've dealt with and the ones that say that they want to help us, being not only here on the ranch, but want to help to create some demonstration projects of what's possible. And that is, they seem to have very good intentions, and I don't think it's because of the fact necessarily that they just want to save the planet. I think that is their number one motivation. But I think they're at the point where they're saying that if they help us to save the planet and they help us to save the world, then they don't have to do all that work themselves, that we will learn to step up and take responsibility for it and do it. And that maybe we can finally kind of, flatten the field, and we can actually rule this world as the people of this world, rather than constantly expecting other individuals to do it for us.
Okay, let's see. Someone wants to know, how are the animals? Have there been any problems lately? And I guess they mean problems with ETs, with the animals.
No, actually, the animals are all great. They're all healthy. They're eating great. They're as feisty as ever. And we just got a new rescue a few days ago, the little white dog that was here on my lap. He's a brand new rescue, and he seems to be very happy.
Okay, and very cute little dog as well. Okay, someone wants to know, do you know Dr. Ketty? I think that's what it says. Unless they spelled it wrong, or Dr. Keith, I'm not sure if that's, maybe they can correct the spelling, who documented the Phoenix Lights.
Oh, Katai?
Oh, Katai, okay. Okay, yeah,
yes,
I see.
I know.
Yeah, I don't think that's how she spells her name.
Yeah, I know Dr. Katai.
Lynn Katai. Yeah. Have you talked to her?
Yes, I have.
And has she ever been out to the ranch?
Yes, she has.
Okay, and can you share her, thoughts or?
In about 2000, no, it wasn't even. It would have been 2001. After the fire here on the ranch and the house burned down, We were staying in the guest house. Dr. Kataya came out and interviewed me for several hours, and she asked me about all the phenomena in the sky, things that I had seen, things that were going on here. And she took a lot of notes, thanked me, and left. And I never heard from her or saw her again.
Okay. So let me see if I'm. Someone says, when was the last event you experienced?
What kind of event?
I don't know. One assumes, since the subject at hand, something to do, was there some, a sighting, an ET, did you bring your sword out recently, that kind of thing?
We have had a couple of experiences where I went to go to bed and there was one standing over my wife in bed. She wears a CPAP face mask to be able to breathe at night so that she doesn't snore. And there was one standing over her, and it looked like it had the hose to the mask pinched off. And my wife was gasping for air. She could still breathe because it has a bypass in it, but she was gasping for air. And I yelled, and the ray disappeared. My wife sat up in the bed, and she asked me what was wrong. And I said, "You were gasping for air. There was a gray standing right over you, and it looked like it was pinching off your airline." That was the last time.
Okay. How long ago was that?
Maybe 2 months ago.
Okay. Someone wants to know, do they talk to you about Planet X?
No.
No.
I haven't heard anything about Planet X from anybody.
Okay. All right, let's see if there's anything else here. Someone wants to know if you will talk about your book.
Sure, I'm happy to. Again, I don't know what to say other than I've already said, and that is that it's the first of 3 books. It is going to be the in-depth story of the events here on the ranch up through about 2002. And it's very intense. That first book is very, very intense because a lot of things happen. Actually, I take that back. It's later than that. It goes up through about 2008. So, yeah, there's been a tremendous amount of events that happened during that period of time. Hundreds.
Okay. Has any military person or a secret agent or whatever tried to contact you lately?
We have regular contact with various different alphabet agencies, either because of the fact that they have literally come out and interviewed us, or they have been in the area. We have had a couple of what seem like crashes out here in the last 2 years south of us in the mountains, and we saw military type vehicles go out that way. And so at one point, the whole area was shut down. The road in front of the ranch was shut down. Excuse me, close to sneezing here. Um, the um, The interesting thing about that particular event was the fact that they brought out what looked like the same kind of chambers that they use for divers when they decompress, and they have to be placed in a decompression type of chamber. They brought out 2 of those on flatbed trucks, and they drove out into the desert at about 60 miles an hour as fast as they could. So I don't have any way of knowing what actually transpired out there, but
Okay.
it was pretty impressive at the time. I mean, it was kind of shocking.
All right. And actually, that sounds like maybe they had an aquatic ET.
I was thinking maybe it was because they were used to being in a high pressure situation, and maybe the decompression that they experienced during the crash, they needed to be taken and put into those chambers to isolate them so that they could stabilize and maybe equalize the pressure back to what they were used to.
Okay. Someone else is asking, why do you think that the ETs haven't harmed you more seriously?
Well, I don't know what seriously is. I mean, considering both my wife and I have had some major medical problems as a result of this. Um, we have scars all over us. We have, we've been through the mill hard. In terms of why haven't they killed us? Um, Maybe they couldn't. I mean, I've done a lot more damage on them than they've done on me.
Okay. Someone wants to know, why would there be a spaceship under your house and can't you feel that?
I can't feel it. I mean, I don't have any ability to be able to do any kind of subterranean, uh, you know, sensing of anything. All I know is that in about 2004, we were going to sell the ranch, and we got a call from the USGS, and the guy who called us was on an airplane, and he said, "I've been looking at local real estate, and I see that your property's for sale." And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "You're asking about 20 times too little for it." And at the time, I was asking about $1 million for it. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You sit on top of one of the largest aquifers in the state, and that the water that you have underneath your ranch is some of the best water there is." He said, "You ought to consider putting in a bottling plant." And I said, "Well, thank you for the information." And he said, "I just want to be honest with you and tell you so that you don't kick yourself later on when you find out what's really there." At the time, I thought that was a strange phone call, but I was grateful. But that's all I know about anything that's under.
Well, actually, vortexes, I mean, are, water and vortexes really go together. So that doesn't sound completely out of the question. If you were given that tip, why don't you investigate further? You could get a dowser out there, for example.
Uh, well, I mean, we have as many as 40 different water stations for the horses on the property. And we have like a horse and a half pump in the well. And we can pump tons of water. I mean, at every one of those water stations simultaneously. So I know that we have unbelievable water pressure, availability, volume, the whole works. We
Well,
have
you
one
could bottle it then.
dairies that's nearby. They have hundreds and hundreds of cattle, and they never run short on water. Even when we have had like months of no rain or anything else here in the desert, we've never had a water shortage.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Perhaps someone listening might be able to help you develop that. Certainly, that's, one way to make money and be able to save the ranch. Let's see. Someone wants to know, are they going to, meaning the ETs, I guess, going to show themselves to the world soon?
Yes, that's what they're telling me. But again, I'm not going to be the guy that stands up and says, "Here they are," and there's no proof. So if they're going to prove, they got to prove it to me, and at the same time they have to prove it to the world. Now they've already proved it to me sufficiently, okay, but they're going to have to do the same thing. Because I told them, they said, we might want to do like a news conference or something out here. And I said, well, that would be pretty cool. But I said, you're going to have to do more than just show up and look like rock stars. You're going to actually have to show up and bring some big time tangible proof. And I said, that means at least as big time as when you showed it to me the first time. And that means a big ship or a dozen or so ships, something that people can look at it and say, okay, this isn't a trick. This is the real deal. And they understand that. And they sympathize with, the way I'm explaining it to them. I told them, I said, look, the kids, people in the world are kind of like kids. Okay. And if they're going to be believing in Santa Claus, they need a guy to show up in a red suit with a big bag of toys. And I said, if you can do that, maybe they'll believe. I think that, that goes a long way toward proving, that it's real. But short of that, I'm not willing to stick my neck out and my credibility out there and have it challenged.
Oh, okay. So I take it none of the the human, so-called human ETs that you met with would want to come on the show.
I don't know. We would have to. I think if you got Dr. B on the show, I think she could answer a lot of questions for you that I can't answer because she's had a lot more contact with them than I have. And I
Okay.
asked her,
But again, that would just be her word of mouth, right?
I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask her, but I'm more than happy to give you her phone number.
Well, it is word of mouth. I mean, you can, you know, in other words, word of mouth is word of mouth. What we do is witness testimony. When I do an interview where the person is talking, that's the only evidence we have. In other words, unless they demonstrate themselves to be one of them in whatever way they wish, and so on. So in her case, it's still witness testimony, but you know, there's no reason why, you know, she's welcome to come on the show as well if she has something to share.
Well, Carrie, I'm thinking that maybe she would bring one or two of them on the show with her.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, you know, let's just say there's an open invitation. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Have you seen any tall whites?
Yes. I have to. I have seen on two different occasions. I have seen them, but I have really not had that too much contact with the tall whites. I've only really been dealing with the smaller ones. But the photos that are on the ranch website, those are of taller grays. And they are the taller whites.
Okay. I think there's maybe a confusion as to what a tall white is. The tall whites, as at least Charles Hall referred to them, are not grays of any kind. They're a certain species of ET that is very tall, thin, blonde, and not to be, there's no confusion whatsoever about them being grays. If you're talking about a tall white gray, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. And if you're talking about Nordics, yes, I have met those.
Okay, well, Nordics would be another race. Actually, there are many races of Nordics. So then you'd have to kind of qualify. Did they say what planet they were from, the particular Nordics you saw?
Truthfully, I don't remember.
Okay.
That's terrible, but I'm kind of new to all this stuff. It's hard to keep track of a lot of it.
Okay, fair enough. Here's a person asking, how do you tell, and how can you tell an Earth human from an ET? Or, yeah, how do you tell an ET human from an Earth human?
In most cases, when somebody has made a claim, I have asked them to show me some technology or to show me something that wasn't from Earth to be able to validate that. I have seen some holographic stuff. I've seen some samples of large crystal type objects that I didn't believe were from here. I have seen star maps. I've seen a few different things over time that convinced me that they were telling the truth.
Okay. Your wife has been very much involved in all of this, yet she doesn't come forward. Is there a reason for that?
She's still employed in mental health, but she's actually sitting right here next to me if you'd like to talk to her.
Well, I mean, I don't want to, we're not trying to pressure her. Obviously, if she's trying to safeguard a career or something, it's up to you, really. I'm simply asking whether or not, there's a reason why she doesn't come forward. Are you saying that she's worried about her reputation and her job?
More about job than anything, because she works in a fairly prominent position in mental health currently. And she's concerned that clients that she's working with would see her. And then that would begin to...
And what about just audio? In other words, it seems that your story is getting out there, but perhaps these people wouldn't, necessarily frequent our channel, for example, or the other shows that you're on. I know you've done a number of interviews. So the word must be getting out there if they know who you are, because your name is obviously there and she's married to you. So the association could be made in that way. But if she would like to come forward on audio only and share any stories or anything, she's welcome to do so.
I'll ask her. Do you want to step up here and take the chair and just do audio only to preserve your anonymity?
Well, in that case, she would stay off the screen so that we wouldn't see her physically, so she could maintain her.
Okay. How are you with that? She's willing to do it.
Okay. That would be great. I think people would love to hear, from her a bit if she's interesting, and she'd like to share in any way. We can probably hear her as long as she's in the range of we don't need to see her, but I'm sorry, what was your wife's name?
Joyce.
Okay. So Joyce, if you can hear me and you would like to tell any stories about your sort of response to all of the things that you've been going through in your life.
You have to speak up.
I guess there's been a lot. I just don't know, at what place to begin.
Okay. You're an ex-FBI agent. Is that correct?
No. I used to work for the government, but I was a clerk at one time. A couple years in the 1980s.
But it was the FBI.
Yes.
Okay. So you worked for the FBI, but not as an agent.
Correct.
You decided to leave the FBI. Did you have any ET experiences while you were working for the FBI?
No.
All right. And did it start a long time after that?
Yeah, probably many years after that.
Well, it started.
Okay.
Well, it was, many years after.
So do you feel that you are targeted more or less than your husband?
That's kind of hard to say. I think actually, I don't know how to answer that because he's probably experienced a lot of different things than I have. Maybe because of he is actually here more on the ranch than I am, because I have to go to work in Phoenix, so he's kind of stuck on the ranch a lot more. So a lot of the stuff that's happened to me probably has been at nighttime when I go.
Okay, so are your experiences, in other words, when you both are experiencing something, do you ever see the grays physically?
Physically, not like they're running around during the day. I've seen, kind of hard to explain. I've seen things probably like kind of like I've been in like a dream state, kind of like my mind has been clouded, but I have seen other beings here on the ranch before, and I've seen, I think a few others off. They weren't grays. I've met some.
Okay, so you've seen other ETs? Is that what you're saying? Or are you seeing other, I remember John saying in one of my interviews, he saw a soldier, like a Roman soldier. Are you talking about that, or are you talking about ETs?
Well, both. I've experienced that with John when the power went out years ago. I can't remember what year it was. I remember that same experience where we were watching a movie and the power went out, and a big light just kind of turned on the back hallway, and seemed like the images of these soldiers came walking around the living room in front of the TV and then out on the other side of the house.
Okay, so there was more than one Roman soldier?
Oh, yeah, there was many. I don't know how many, but there's many, and they seemed like they were really, really tall. I remember. It was kind of like the images were kind of like watching like old black and white movie, but there was many of them kind of walked around the room and they kind of just seemed like they just walked right out of the house to the east side of the house outside. They just kind of disappeared. They walked through the living room.
Okay. Do you think that you have been attacked by Greys?
Yes.
And can you talk about that at all? Like, you know, a story? Can you tell us, like, blow by blow, one of the incidents at all? And try to speak as loud as possible, because people, you know, because of the way we're doing this, you know, the louder you can speak, the better.
Okay. Sorry, I also have some kind of weird respiratory
She's got
thing.
the chemtrail flu like I
don't
do.
know what it is. It's been going on since right before Thanksgiving. Anyway, sorry, I lost track now.
Where you got abducted and carried out of the house and up into the triangle.
Well, from what I can recall, somehow I ended up outside on top of John on the ground, and I don't know how I got there. And I kind of like looked up at him and said, "What am I doing here on the ground?" And he helped me inside, and I didn't really have the recollection of what happened the next morning, except that I could hardly walk and I was sore all over. And John didn't really tell me right away. I don't know even what the time frame is. He told me right. He said, "Well, you were taken."
That was 1997.
And for some reason, they don't want me to remember that. And that was when John went outside and he tried shooting at it to let me go, because I was gone.
So you didn't see the craft, in other words?
I might have seen the craft. I don't. For some reason, I don't have a memory at that specific moment. I've seen crafts before, but at that at that time, I don't remember, and I haven't gone under hypnosis or anything about that incident.
Okay. Have you gone under hypnosis, as you call it, or been regressed the way John has?
I've been under hypnosis before a couple times.
And did you have any? Can you share what came out under hypnosis?
I went under hypnosis before because I had a lot of hard time sleeping, and I guess what came out was, from what I recall, that there was a time that someone had been messing with me physically when I was like much younger. For some reason, I've had a lot of disturbances in my sleep, and
what do you mean by someone had been messing with you? Are you talking about ETs? Or are you talking about a human?
Probably both. So
both?
Yeah, and there've been lots of times that in the past I've waken up, like years ago after we moved here. John and I had both waken up, and have actually had waken up, and we've actually had what do you call it? Kind of like burn marks on the inside of our thighs, kind of like when you get like maybe a rope burn to the point where your skin is kind of just really raw and bleeding. Or how do you explain it?
We've had a number of things, from
holes in
scoop
my
marks
arms
to punctures in us to at one point the skin on her hands and feet fell off, to the point where we ended up going to the hospital over it, both of us, because we both had it and it seemed like radiation. And I do have photographs of all that.
He does.
And some of that will actually be in the book.
I had a lot of
it's on the website right now.
Losing the feeling in my fingers and my feet. Had a lot of blistering that wouldn't get better, and I went to the ER twice within I think it was some kind of holiday weekend. I can't remember one. Anyway, it was just
it's like Memorial Day.
Tested my blood, everything came back negative, and I was basically ordered off of work for a week so I could see an infectious disease specialist, And by the time I could get in, it was like a whole week. And John had actually given me
Antibiotics.
some kind of antibiotic we had here from something he had previously years ago. And because he thought I was going to die from it. And by the time I got to infectious disease specialist, the symptoms had cleared up pretty much probably 80% of the way. And they did one more test, which was a swab test. And I'm like, well, what is it? You know, all these tests were negative and you're doing this. He goes, well, I don't really know what it is, but here's some more antibiotics. And then like I think I called back for the results. And he goes, well, they came back negative. We don't really know what you had. So we're glad you're better. And so that was that. There was no other testing. I had a lot of blood tests done.
But see, after that, Gary, because Joyce was not really getting better, she was getting sicker. She kept becoming more and more fatigued, and failure to thrive would be what I would describe it compared to what she used to be. We ended up going ahead and having about $14,000 worth of blood work done on her at the Mayo Clinic. And the Mayo Clinic actually came up with a diagnosis, which they said that anybody that has this diagnosis, over time, it's fatal. And so we've been dealing with that ever since now. That's been a couple of years. And until we met Christopher and Christopher began to work on Joyce, she didn't start getting better.
Okay, well, actually, I recall you saying she was starting to get better right around the time I was at the ranch as well. Not sure whether you remember that, but Joyce, can you tell me, was this whatever you contacted? Did you feel that it was from an ET abduction experience, or do you have a thought about why it happened to you?
You mean the disease, the illness I have?
Yes.
Well, it kind of doesn't run anywhere in my family, and I guess what I have really predominantly does not affect Caucasians at all. It does, but not as much as I guess others. So I've been kind of asking, does this, family members, my mom and dad, I was like, have you ever heard of this?
Well, actually, that's not really the question. What I'm asking you is whether or not you think it has anything to do with ET contact.
Well, that's the only thing that I could, and John and I discussed, is the only thing I could think that where it could come from, because if it's, all my symptoms,
This is typically a disease that affects people of color. It does not affect people that are white or Caucasian people. And to both our knowledge, there are no individuals of color in her family line.
Or European, I believe, too. So
the actual
well, I mean, having a disease and saying it comes from it's not usually with people of certain kind of bloodlines or whatever. The next logical jump is not to thinking that an ET gave it to you or you got it because of ET contact, unless that's what occurs to you. Like what I'm asking Joyce, I guess, is kind of it's more of an intuitive question. I'm asking you whether or not intuitively this is where your mind goes, because diseases can come from everywhere and anywhere under the sun. The first logical place is not ET contact. So is this something that someone told you, or is this something that intuitively you landed on?
Well, intuitively, my immunity typically was really, really strong up until probably a couple of years at least after I moved to the ranch. And for some reason, I mean, it's like I never used to get sick, and then I started having things happen to me, and they've increased over the years. So intuitively, I think it did come from elsewhere.
Let me jump in here for a second. There was an event where both of us received skin punctures, and within a week to a week and a half after that, Joyce began to come down with this terrible rash on the bottoms of her feet, on her hands. She became sick. A day or two after that, I became sick with it, and both of us had exactly the same symptoms. We both went to the same hospital and requested treatment. They did absolutely nothing for us, released us. We went to another hospital because we were both getting worse. That hospital acted like they knew we were coming even. They did absolutely nothing to treat us. They alerted the Center for Disease Control, and shortly after that, we began to receive some special kind of attention from individuals in a government capacity. And I'm not able to tell you more detail about that because I promised I wouldn't.
That's true.
And that is when we proceeded to have meetings with individuals from various universities. Those universities confirmed that after taking blood from us here on the ranch and sending it out to be processed, that the disease was what it was, and that it is a extreme immune reaction to an unknown pathogen, a pathogen that the body cannot identify, and so it cannot manufacture a white cell reaction to it that's specific to that disease. What it does instead is it begins to pick specific parts of the body, such as the various organs, and attack them and destroy them, and that's how people die. Now,
But you guys both got over this disease, right?
Well, I got over the symptoms within about a week and a half, and I've never had any more problem that I'm aware of. But it seems like my body's been polluted so badly over all the years by different diseases that my body just says, okay, you're in the disease club, we'll fight you too. And I seem to get over it. Whereas Joyce doesn't get over it. And in this particular case, she's still fighting it. And she still has scars all over her body from it. She has, terrible places where she gets these red patches on her, and then they clear up, but then they come back, and they kind of look like somebody who has measles or chicken pox, and they go down.
Well, there could be something in the soil at your ranch she's allergic to also. Is there, Joyce, can you tell us, did you have abduction experiences when you were young, before you met John?
No. I never really experienced anything or witnessed anything paranormal up until I moved to the ranch.
Yeah, all the freaky stuff started after she got together with me.
Oh.
Well, I mean, that may be true, but it also may not. And I have to say that a lot of people do have paranormal experiences and don't realize they're having them. And they may not know they're having, even they may not know they're psychic or particularly empathic, and yet they may be. What led you to work for the FBI, for example?
Well, I used to have a friend that I was just interested, and I had a friend whose sister worked for there, and she, at the time, I have a criminal justice background. I have a degree in criminal justice, so she encouraged me to apply, and she said, well, you can apply as a clerk, and you can move up if you want, and so I put in it, and actually 2 years later, I got hired. So I did it for like almost 2 years. It was interesting. It wasn't for me to stay with it.
Okay. So in your line of work, are you a therapist now?
No.
You're a health professional of some kind?
I work in mental health, and I'll just say that I'm not a counselor or therapist. But
you're not. Okay.
Health professional, and I'll leave it at that. I can't really disclose at this time what my position is.
Do you have nightmares?
I do. I would call them nightmares. John always seems to call them nightmares.
I got the marks on my body that prove it. They're nightmares, at least for me, because she gets violent in her sleep and attacks me.
Yeah, I'm kind of like a different person when I sleep.
Okay.
I swing.
She reenacts events in her sleep, and for the last 15 years, as much as I love my wife, I don't like sleeping with her very much.
So the ETs that have been disturbing you, according to John, are seen leaning over you. Are you aware of these ETs?
Leaning over me?
Yeah, in a couple situations, he suggests that, for example, they're pinching off some kind of breathing apparatus or something.
Oh, I do wear a CPAP mask, and so there have been times I've woken up that I've had a hard time breathing and I couldn't figure out why, and I had my mask on. So if he had,
but you yourself were not aware that there was an ET in close proximity?
Only according to what John told me the next morning, that he had to fight him off with the sword or whatever.
Okay. Well, have you seen the ETs he's been fighting with swords?
No, I haven't seen them in the house. I've seen a lot of things that they've done. There's a lot of times that I see stuff, and I like in the evening and stuff, and I asked John, I said, "You just see what I saw?" And he said, "Yeah." For an example, there's a lot of times I'll hear things and see things, but I don't see like image of a being. And so, like, perfect example, there's like an empty water bottle on the table, and all of a sudden it'll start moving. Try to get our attention. It'll start moving around and float up, and things have been lifted off the table, simple things, wallet,
dogs,
a little dog. But like I'm always like asking John, "Did you see that?" He goes, "Yeah." "Okay, good. You saw what I saw." We actually have a few dogs that come in the living room, and we can tell they can see a lot more than we can a lot of times, because they run over to the corner, and all of a sudden they'll just stare at the corner, and they'll start growling, and they'll start barking.
Yeah.
Then they'll back up, and then they'll want to like stare at the floor for hours. And so, like, we're watching TV, and it's kind of funny. And I'm like, look. So then we just go, "Well, get it," and then they'll start barking at it at the floor. And so that kind of stuff goes on.
Right.
A lot of the only way I can explain this one is images on the ceiling that are kind of
like white shadows.
Yeah, kind of like white shadows, like a big, kind of like maybe 8-12 inches round blob on the ceiling. When obviously we're not using a flashlight, but it would look like bigger than that. Big blob, white blobs on the ceiling. Sorry.
Okay. So do you ever try to communicate with these sort of unseen presences? Have you ever tried yourself? Have you ever been communicated with or tried to communicate with them?
Well, I guess in a way there have been times I've gotten pissed off because
that's a mild understatement.
Well, I mean, examples over the years. There've been quite a few times that lights have been turned off, or I've been in the shower and the light's gone off, and I go, "Come on, damn it, just turn it back on." And John's not around, and so it's
smoke alarms when I'm out of state.
This, well, yeah, that one. The smoke alarms have gone off at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. One will start, and then all of a sudden, all of them will go off, and then all of them they'll just shut off all at the same time. It got to the point where we just went around and even took the batteries out of them, took them out of the ceiling, put them in the drawer, and they still would go off. And we'd look at them and like the battery's not even in it.
Exactly.
There's no battery in it, and they're still going off.
Right. Okay. Have you ever noticed that you have an ability to affect things around you, like lights, etc.?
What do you mean by that question? I mean, I have the ability.
I mean, you specifically, have you ever seen, walking under a street lamp, for example, have it go off? Have you had, lights, do the lights in your car? In other words, are you finding that you're affecting lights?
Not that I recall. So I don't
Yeah.
know exactly. You
We
show
used
that.
to have a standing joke that Joyce could make anything that was electrical break.
Oh, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, perfectly things that worked perfectly until she got around them. All of a sudden, they stopped working, and then
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
she'd get out of the car, or she'd get away from it, and then it would go back to working again. And
Yes.
I used to tell her that she was like a one-person wrecking crew as far as like electronics. To this day, she still doesn't. I try to I don't forbid her, but I ask her not to touch more expensive electrical things.
Yeah, no,
Plasma TV.
do you, Joyce, can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Are you aware that that's a sign of an ET abductee, a person that's had a lot of ET exposure and tends to also possibly be an abductee?
No, I'm not. Until this moment, he's actually saying, I thought he was just messing with me all this time. Messing with me.
No, it was terrible. I used to buy her cars that worked great. I mean, I've always been a collector of sports cars, and so I'd buy her a car that I thought she'd look hot in, and the next thing I know, the car's like, going crazy and it's not working, and I'm thinking to myself,
Right.
not a good thing. I just bought her. I bought her like a Toyota Supra. It was a really nice Toyota Supra with a custom paint on it, and it took her like, I don't know, 2 days for the car to start malfunctioning. And within a week and a half, everything electric on that car just went kablooey. And I ended up having to take it back to the guy I bought it from. And he said, "What did you do to the car?" And I said, "All we did was drive it." And he goes, "Well, I just went through this car mechanically perfectly before I sold it to you. And there was nothing wrong with it." And then
Right.
when I got it back, it took him like a week just to be able to try to get some things straightened out. And he said they never did work right again. So we ended up having to get him to refund the money and take the car back.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that as an intuitive, I can tell that Joyce is, she's kind of like a beacon. So she's attracting, it's not just the ranch. But Joyce, you yourself are attracting some of the beings to this ranch. I just want to tell you that. Have you, in your abductions, had interactions with ETs that in your regressions, like the regressions that you've had, have you had ETs talking to you in those that, then the therapist told you or whatever? Did you have any information about that?
I honestly don't recall. I'd probably have to have another one done. I just kind of recently, in the last year or so, kind of go by with what John has told me. He's actually has witnessed me speaking other languages in my sleep, and so he thinks that I'm having a conversation with another race, which I really, honestly, for some reason, my brain is not connecting and remembering it the next day.
Right.
He tells me, and I just kind of laugh about it. I just, I guess I have a hard time getting my head around that one.
Joyce is very, very good about, she's kind of like one of those, those pop-up dolls. You punch them and no matter how far they tip over, they always pop back up and they're like back to normal. And Joyce is kind of like, no matter what happens, she just pops back up and keeps going. And she minimizes things because of the fact that the events that she has been involved in and that have occurred around her, in some cases have been so traumatic that she has no recall of those events. And I have to explain them to her because I was right there and it happened and I saw it. But it's almost like she experiences sleep paralysis or she experiences some kind of blocking, or maybe she blocks some of it herself because it's so traumatic. A lot of things she just doesn't recall. And then what will happen is later on, things will come back to her, but they only come back to her in bits and pieces. And then even after that, they're so nasty, so bad that she doesn't want to remember them, and so she lets them go, and then it's hard for her to recall them again. You know, and I was very similar way until I met with this hypnotherapist that I worked with so much here in Arizona, and he was able to get me to the point where I could not only remember, but I could do it in such a way that it didn't freak me out to hear it. You know, and the way he did that was he recorded the sessions. And so when I heard my own voice saying the things that I had been told that I said, at that point I understood that, yeah, what I was remembering, what I was hearing on the tape, and what the sort of like 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional experience was real. But Joyce has never gotten that far, partially because we don't have the availability to that right now. We don't have the money to be able to do that right now. And, you know, really, she works so much that she doesn't have the time to be able to go to those kind of things, not to mention go through possibly what the results would be emotionally afterwards.
Sure. Okay, well, you know, we've had you guys on for a while now. Joyce, obviously you're an untapped resource, and you think you have a lot of good information that you don't know you have. So I would encourage you, if and when you can get a chance to, even if you were to write, spend some time writing, it may come to you that way, but you could also get there by doing some sessions. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I know that the sound is not ideal here. It's difficult because Joyce is not on the screen, so she's not, you know, we're trying to protect her here so that physically she won't be in front of the mic because she's not in front of the screen. It's the way computers are working. Maybe at a later date, we can arrange an interview with Joyce when she feels up to it, and try to make the audio more, you know, appropriate, I guess. It's very difficult with Google Hangouts to get, there's no way to call or use a phone and get much better results either. So we're kind of at the mercy of the situation we've got here, everyone. So there have been some complaints about not being able to hear things. I will be putting this out. It's going over YouTube. You can listen to it again. Hopefully you can hear most of what has been said here. And I want to thank both of you very much for coming on the show. It's great information. It's great that you're sharing. And thank you, Joyce, specifically, because I know this was not, you weren't planning to come on the show, and it's kind of unexpected. And you've done a great job in trying to answer the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Okay, thanks everyone for your good questions that came in the chat, and you know, it's been fascinating. Let's try to do this again in the future, John. And like I said, with Joyce as well, my invitation is open to her at any time. So both of you take care. Any parting words from either of you?
I would just say, you know, that anybody that needs to get hold of us, can I go ahead and give my email?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can reach me at johnedmonds411@gmail.com. You know, feel free, if you have questions or you want to make a contribution to Hopeful Hooves or anything like that, to please feel free to contact me. I try to answer everybody at least once. Some people have gotten to the point where they you know, talk to us a bunch of different times. I can't promise I'll do that all the time, depending on how much, you know, mail I get, but I will do the best I can to be responsible for answering respectful questions.
Thank you. Okay. Also want to say that Hopeful Hooves, if you could, John is rescuing animals. Horses take a lot of money to feed, obviously. He has a number of dogs and so on. So if you can help contribute his, I actually have a banner at the bottom of my website on projectcamelotportal.com. You can click there. Also on this this posting where this interview will appear, it will have links. So if you can contribute to help the animals on John's ranch, that would be great, as well as the humans.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
assumes, since the subject at hand, something to do, was there some, a sighting, an ET, did you bring your sword out recently, that kind of thing?
We have had a couple of experiences where I went to go to bed and there was one standing over my wife in bed. She wears a CPAP face mask to be able to breathe at night so that she doesn't snore. And there was one standing over her, and it looked like it had the hose to the mask pinched off. And my wife was gasping for air. She could still breathe because it has a bypass in it, but she was gasping for air. And I yelled, and the ray disappeared. My wife sat up in the bed, and she asked me what was wrong. And I said, "You were gasping for air. There was a gray standing right over you. And it looked like it was pinching off your airline." That was the last time.
Okay. How long ago was that?
Maybe 2 months ago.
Okay. Someone wants to know, do they talk to you about Planet X?
No.
No.
I haven't heard anything about Planet X from anybody.
Okay. All right. Let's see if there.
Yes. And again, like I said, they did show me proof. I mean, it's, the kind of things that
proof because they demonstrated the thing to do with the sound. Is that correct?
Well, that was just in the most recent one. But I mean, my wife and I sat on the pickup truck on the back tailgate of our pickup truck in 2011 and saw this ship that there were three of them standing there with swords up in the air. And the next thing you know, this huge monster ship comes out from the east side of the road, and it's maybe 500 or 600 feet above our heads, and it's huge. And it was so big that it started a weather pattern that became a terrible monsoon storm right then and there. And it was just, that's how the lightning ended up. This whole sky was dark, and there were other ships that were south in the sky. The whole sky was lit up with ships. I mean,
okay.
Get any, more?
Why do you say the ETs were holding swords? Are you saying?
Yep.
They were holding swords.
Big swords, like literally looked like broadswords, which, trust me, didn't do anything for my sense of the fact that it was really some demonstration projects of what's possible. And that is, they seem to have very good intentions, and I don't think it's because of the fact necessarily that they just want to save the planet. I think that is their number one motivation. But I think they're at the point where they're saying that if they help us to save the planet and they help us to save the world, then they don't have to do all that work themselves, that we will learn to step up and take responsibility for it and do it. And that maybe we can finally kind of, flatten the field, and we can actually rule this world as the people of this world, rather than constantly expecting other individuals to do it for us.
Okay, let's see. Someone wants to know, how are the animals? Have there been any problems lately? And I guess they mean problems with ETs, with the animals.
No, actually, the animals are all great. They're all healthy. They're eating great. They're as feisty as ever. And we just got a new rescue a few days ago. The little white dog that was here on my lap, he's a brand new rescue, and he seems to be very happy.
Okay, and very cute little dog as well. Okay, someone wants to know, do you know Dr.
An actual experience, but it happened.
Okay.
All I do is repeat the truth.
All right. Let's see. John, can you disclose any info that good ETs disclose to you that humanity should know?
Right now, we already have all the answers to fix everything that is wrong with this planet in terms of ecological damage, in terms of radiation damage, in terms of being able to have access to clean water, clean air, And really, it's just about us as the inhabitants of this planet deciding that we're not going to be in a position anymore where we're going to allow the rulers of the planet to tell us what conditions we have to live in, or how we have to live in, or who we have to pay for what. We already have the availability to change all that. We have the availability not to be a bunch of rats on a bunch of wheels making, the rest of the system work for the 1%.
Okay. Someone else wants to know, do you know anything about the ET's intentions?
I can only speak for the ones that I've dealt with and the ones that say that they want to help us, being not only here on the ranch, but want to help to create.
Ketty, I think that's what it says. Unless they spelled it wrong, or Dr. Keith, I'm not sure if that's, maybe they can correct the spelling, who documented the Phoenix Lights.
Oh, Katai.
Oh, Katai. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
I see.
I know.
Yeah, I don't think that's how she spells her name.
Yeah, I know Dr. Katai.
Lynn Katai.
Yeah.
Have you talked to her?
Yes, I have.
And has she ever been out to the ranch?
Yes, she has.
Okay. And can you share her, thoughts or?
In about 2000, no, it wasn't even. It would have been 2001. After the fire here on the ranch and the house burned down, we were staying in the guest house. Dr. Katai came out and interviewed me for several hours, and she asked me about all the phenomena in the sky, things that I had seen, things that were going on here, and she took a lot of notes, thanked me, and left, and I never heard from her or saw her again.
Okay. So let me see if I'm. Someone says, when was the last event you experienced?
What kind of event?
I don't know.